Trypt vs. Time Round 1. Fight. Subjective time always plagues me. Because I am aware of the eternal, I'm very focused, and it is of my utmost concern in life to guard what I put into motion. Eternity is a long time. One of the tricks the coiled demon snake of time that started in the Garden of Eden and lured Adam, then Eve. Suggesting that the feminine receptive half of our minds conceptualized that there were other time streams, but in the garden, there was no apparent passage of time. To our primary progenitors, there were no other alternate timelines, no past life, no future life, which all occur as the result of the birth of time. What was in that fruit that they were tempted to eat? Was it wisdom? Or fate? In the sacred space God created, none of this world or its cataclysm should have happened, and they were naked due to their ignorance of self, that they were individual entities, apart from God. The fruit, when it was eaten, contained coils of unformed time streams. For each creative deviation that God emitted from likeness of himself, Yah created every single possibility of himself that was slightly imperfect, possibly to see why, if Yah gave them free will, what would they do with it? The creation had already been established on earth. There were already giants and dragons, living beside alien-looking Nephilim and Anasazi, as well as primates who were confused as being the first humans here, but lacked the sophisticated prefrontal cortex and hippocampus to conceive forms outside of the present circumstances and moment. Eating the fruit of the tree meant the tree had to have been the whole of existences, with all of the time streams present in one collective flow of energy that metaphorically represented a tree. The fruit was the result of all that existence. It's almost like saying, God knew what would happen if he put official legit humans down on the planet he created, so he kept us in the garden to keep us safe, because we would invariably either destroy ourselves or we would have to be destroyed, even after he sent his immortal, time-roving self into it many times to try to save it. Eating the fruit began the dream. He appointed certain angels to fall, to keep the sub-theist powers to attempt to create a diverse enough substance to work with, but the fallen took it upon themselves to teach people to be controlled by fear of annihilation. The individual entity we are was created with an inherent fear of destruction, because our souls are fragments which contain the blueprints of both the creation and destruction. Our souls know this life and existence is temporary. Lucifer is a dual soul. He knows that this will come to pass. He has all of God's knowledge, but at the same time he is plagued with extreme individuality and uses his free will experimentally. In a sense, he has no clue that he is a mindless slave to God's will, but consistently appoints himself as being the sole creator of all that transpires in the world. He illuminates the darkness and uses the unknowingness of the people and their afflictions with addictions to the material realm. In a sense, God's other side was the serpent in the tree. We are pre-programmed to be led by anything that sounds like it knows more than we do. Our souls are hungry and want to learn. There wasn't anything to learn in the garden. We had it all. It was in a sense keeping children in daycare, well past adolescence. We wanted to see. We wanted to know. So he created the Dark Traveling Serpent of Time to be our farrier, essentially a tour guide through the most fantastic virtual reality simulation ever created, except for the one that comes after this one. Like the function of VR goggles that permit sight into a realm, a dimension that is not our native, he gave us senses for which we are to experience sensory things, to touch, feel, taste, think, perceive, cognize, and installed a little tiny experiencer node point to act as the recipient of the experience and a will to choose what to experience. The Dark Serpent of Time looms overhead and beyond our ordinary state of consciousness and confusion. It is the train that which processes anything the individual unit processes, stores and uses variables and equations to create more scenarios based on the illusion of free will to both divide and unity, to take away and to give and to create and destroy, so that our experience remains unique to us. When it has two individual processing units, aka beings that have parallel, identical, or similar experiences, it defaults to throwing away the systematic functions to the creator, and it considers it an error that the serpent is not supposed to process. That is when our experiences with each other transcend time. We have blissful moments of a taste of eternity, our natural home, and feel complete with another human or animal or any living thing for that matter. It is very easy for us to get stuck in the rivers of causality that the serpent of time is helping us navigate. Because of fear of change, or loss, or anything detrimental to us being able to flow with life's processes, we can get stuck or fixated on something that time has taken away, a fear that the river of life and or causality will deny us forward flow into its ever-changing boundaries. This is when we barricade ourselves into our homes and comfort zones where we found a calm, cool pool in the river of life. The fear of something greater than you doesn't mean that the thing is greater than you, it just means your fear is greater than you. Courage is necessary to reach higher levels of consciousness, and remember that we are pre-programmed to forget that we are in a very intricately designed but temporary model of the next multiverse. I see Christ and the several other prophets with levity, as Christ for instance. It seemed like Adam and Eve, being naked at the beginning, seemed to be ashamed, but not in the sense of a personal feeling, but it made him don the suit of the Earth robot. That was the clothes he put on, that which would equip him to exist within the simulation, which Gnostics call the Demiurge. The Demiurge was created so that God's plan would be fulfilled. Was it necessary for us to have to wear these Earth robot exoskeletons and enter the Demiurge simulation for his will to be fulfilled? Why all the suffering and torment? The suits are directly tied with the ethereal principle driving them. It was considered a gift. God said, "You're bored. Me too. Let's play video games. But don't lose your ethereal principle, otherwise you can never return back to being Earth robot-less. You will get stuck in another level of the simulation and won't be able to use your soul. You will be stuck in a simulation that is based on the experiential data that your Earth robot stored. Forgiveness is unplugging from the suit's experiential data and not allowing its transgressions and stuck mode mentalities to corrupt your soul. There are two types of failed afterlives. One where you maintain your soul but it becomes corrupted. Then the shadow time that your central processing unit absorbed itself in for all that time becomes real and your Earth robot decays and has to find another host body. The other is abandoning your Earth robot, which leaves you floating in a sub-time dimension where you are all robot, so is your existence, stuck doing and experiencing the things you did when you forgot that you were in a simulation. You become part of the simulation as a residual entity, a virtual image that cannot exist beyond what data your Earth robot had acquired in life. In essence, you are a ghost. Christ came to show people that they were in a simulation. He was God, appearing in a fully convincing Earth robot and dancing around existence to remind us that we are definitely experiencing something of a temporal flux, where the object is to not kill each other. This isn't the realm of the eternal purge that comes next between this version of Demiurge and the next. He even had himself killed to show that the soul is free enough to come and go as it pleases. The love that we know of seems to just be to defy the serpent's coils and straining of our souls to submit to the simulation, and strangling us into submission by pre-creating tangles of timelines projections so that we may surrender to the flesh-bot world instead of exonerating the beauty of our supernal existence within the infinite. Power is an illusion, created systematically by the ones who surrender spiritual requisites and absorb themselves into the material realm over the ones who do not choose to believe that this is permanent. What the Earth robot acquires gets processed back into the serpent matrix. Humans can create fodder for the serpent of time to work with, and it will impose it on future manifestations of the source to use it to tempt the children of the deceased. This interlacing timeline of future now is intended to further reinforce the illusion, keeping us from realizing we are in a simulation, by reprogramming future generations with limiting thought potential such as educational systems that perpetuate a false history, religion that reinforces the hopelessness and despair from ever transcending the matrix, politicians who run amok with determination to create their own domain within this one to lure the masses into oblivion and distract them from ascension. Humans have the power to create simulations within the simulation. The other side can, too, in the form of dreams and interdimensional travel. Time and space create the illusion of reality, aka the demiurge, to keep us bound to a natural progression where we must take all the necessary steps of spiritual evolution before we are allowed to open new levels like teleportation, traveling faster than the omnimatrix that is like an indestructible fabric created by the mesh-working network of photons, tachyons and the paths of probability and determinism. In other words, we must be able to defeat the transition of the creation of these God particles that are sent from the source to reflect first off of objects and space to our perceptions and back to the source. We are the intermediaries experiencing the light of the simulation, and much data is lost in translation when it comes to our sensory environment. We have a subconscious reservoir for the implications of reality, that which we don't fully cognize but is left to determination of being held as superfluous data. The material antithesis is probably that we can't see that this universe is actually full of holes. Where things seem near, they are actually far, threshed apart by dark substance, while things that are far are near due to them being surrounded by the dark substance. Everything in our psyches is reflected by a real-life counterpart in the simulation. What we expect to see is what we see. Suspending the ocular module equipped with our Earth robot allows for remote viewing. The ethereal mass projects itself out beyond the illusion of space and time, but now how do we transport the Earth robot that way, and is it even necessary? To be continued.